master baker, Togara Mabharani.
Very good morning and welcome to everybody, the 15th edition of this show. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of Show Cook and all the sponsors behind for all the 15 years with all the hard times going through. Thank you so much. And to Show Cook for giving me this opportunity to explain and pass my knowledge to the youngsters, especially in the baking arena. Without wasting time, I would like to thank the MC for the brilliant and wonderful introduction, which I don't need to go further as well. Thank you. Without wasting time, I'm going to be looking at how the bread is going to be judged, and the marks are going to be allocated on the four. There is three breads which are going to be presented by each of the bakers, which is our one outstanding bread, the sourdough. Then we have the brioche, which is also a traditional bread from France. Then we have one of the oldest bread, barley bread. The bread is one of the oldest and basic food in the world, and I'm sure everybody loves it. And because it's homely, it is homely, and it's very easy to make bread. It comes in various and different flavors. You can flavor bread, you can make it the way you want to. And we are going to be looking at the innovation part and creativity of, that is the first part of how bread is going to be judged. Without wasting time. Innovation, we're going to look at what you've invented in the recipe, especially on a sourdough. Then you can make it in an oval, you can make it in a baguette, that's an invention. The judge will be looking at that. It comes in a baguette, that's an invention. You've changed it, and creativity as well. You can actually change it completely from the recipe into something else that is also allowed. That will give you more marks on the innovation and creativity. Then the professional preparation, this goes back to the means and plus. Every kitchen has to have a setup, a means and plus. And this is going to be revealed in your preparation, professional preparation as you present the bread. It's actually revealed how you were well prepared by the judge. Even if the judge was not even there on your preparation, that can be revealed in your bread, the appearance of your bread. And then thirdly, the presentation. You can present your bread anyhow, in platters, in baskets. I've seen so much creativity in presentation, in some of the students presenting bread to the extent of making a basket out of dough, then present the bread into one of those baskets. That's much creativity. I'm sure that will get you more points as well on that. Then on the test, which is the most important part of the test for bread, which we're looking at. For bread bakers, test is explained by normal bread consumers and those who consume it in bread, the bakers, I'll say, the bakers, is quite differently. Different terms are used. Consumers or the end user will just say the bread was tasty, the bread was nice. But in bread baking, we have different terms which we use depending on the type of bread and how it was made, how it was fermented. That explains the taste of the bread. Here at the sourdough, we're going to be looking at it is acidic taste, the lactic taste. We're going to look at it, the crispiness, the crusty, that gives you more points, and the color as well. How it was baked, the texture, the crumb inside, that's marks for that. Then on the brioche, which is a very enriched dough, which is a venezuela between bread and pastries. That's a difficult, one of the difficult breads to make as well. I also struggle with that, I must agree. It's a very enriched bread. We're going to be looking at the texture as well, which is a sweet bread. sweet between cake and bread. So we're going to be looking at how tasty the sweetness, how light it is, the flakiness as well for it. Then on the barley bread, this bread you can make it in any form, in a tin or in an artisanal way. And with barley, we're going to be looking at its nutty flavor, nutty taste, and it's quite a heavy bread. And creativity comes in along there as you because making barley bread straight from a barley flour is a difficult task to do. Your creativity and your ability to combine it with other flours that can be counted as well to come up with a good barley, outstanding barley bread as well. And that is all on how the judge is going to be looking at the breads. And I am sure for all the bakers who stand up, I congratulate you for entering such a big show, and wish you good luck. If I have any questions for the bakers, or I can assist in.
I think Togara, what's so exciting is all the bakers are going to come to you on the 1st of April and have a proper masterclass. It's very exciting.
Oh yes. For all the bakers on the 1st of April, we expect to meet at I Love Coffee.
Are there any questions from the floor?
Oh, yes.
Not one?
Yes, I got you. Yes, it makes a difference. The longer the starter, the more mature it is, and the more flavor you're going to get. It's quite, and also it changes the color. You might find out a long old starter, a 10-year-old starter, with a 5 to 2 months old starter. The color outside, the caramelization outside is completely different. It acquires a dark color because of the edge as well. So even the crumb changes as well, which is a good thing.
You know, Togara, I very often find that when I buy a sourdough,
Yes.
that in fact it is not a sourdough. That it looks like a sourdough, it's beautifully baked, it has a crust,
Yes.
but actually it is not the real thing.
Yes.
So I think there aren't too many shortcuts to making a really excellent bread. And I do hope that whoever is going to be baking will begin to understand the difference between something that looks good and something that has got the right taste and texture and flavor.
Yes, I agree with you. There are a lot of commercial sourdoughs which are appearing, showing up in many of our commercial shops, and they look good. The appearance, they look good, but when it comes to trying to find out the sourness, where it is, you can't look at it, you won't get it. It's just the same as our normal standard bread, which is.
So where do you think they're going wrong?
It's commercial baking. It's just for money. I think so.
Too many wrongs.
Too many wrongs. You need to have the right tools. You need to have the right flour. That's the first thing. That we go back to mise en place, which is the first stage in any kitchen. The right flour, which is you need to get. And we are fortunate enough here in South Africa. We got best flours. We got very good flours, which are constant supply. We look at one of our flours, the Bio, which is a very good flour that we use. You need to have a good flour. You need to have a good starter, which is you. Which is I feel when preparing bread, when it comes to bread, it's all about you, because it is living. It is living. It is living. The moment you put your sourdough, it ferments. Then it's all like a pet. For me, it's like a pet. That's how I treat it. So I'll put it close. I have to feed it. It has to tell me it's ready. I don't have to judge the time, 1 hour, 2 hours. I have to feed it. I have to be connected. That's the whole idea about getting to a good sourdough.
Do you think there's a difference between using instant yeast and using fresh yeast?
Yes, there is a difference if you cannot use it properly, because instant yeast is much more powerful than the fresh yeast. And I would prefer using the normal fresh yeast.
Fresh yeast.
But other than that, I'm running away from fresh yeast, doing all my breads, all sourdoughs, even the brioche, the bakers, which is quite healthy and accepted into our normal daily lives.
Togara, there's a question. Yeah, Brenda.
So I wanted to ask, in your time as a baker, what bread would you say you've mastered? Like in a way you can say, I know like the back of my hand.
When it comes to bread, it's all bread for me is bread. It's the moment I get my flour, I start weighing my flour, I put all my everything into it. That represents me. Remember, the bread you're making is going to be consumed, eaten by somebody. That represents you. So all you just have to put all your everything into it. So I cannot say this is my best bread. This is the.
I wanted to ask, can you add spices to the sour bread? Because in Austria, they have a sour bread, but then they add spice to it. So it's completely different to what here in South Africa we have.
That's a good question. When I look at bread, the bread is just flour, water, and salt. That's bread. Adding those like spices, that becomes another thing. Because what we want, that's enriched. Because what we want the flavor for the flour. That's why we do all the long process of fermenting it and retarding it into the fridge, getting it proving so low. We want to extract that flavor from the flour, from the flour which had dried for so many years. So getting to do that, it's a long process. Now adding spices and all those salts into the bread, you are now contradicting with the taste of the flour. You're running away from the flour, you're tasting spicy. But I would suggest bread is just flour, water, and salt.
It's different from here because in Austria they add like different spices to their bread, and then they normally say that it's good for their bread. But then when you come to South Africa, it's completely something different. So that's why I'm asking: is it traditional to put spices to the bread, or does it really have, or is it like different cultures for different breeds?
No. Traditionally, the sourdough is just water, flour, and salt. That's the base. That's the base of the sourdough. But you can flavor it. It's now modern baking. You can flavor it depending on the request of somebody. If somebody wants it, that's what he wants. But for me, just bread, water, flour, and salt. That's enough, and you get your good bread. That's all.
Togara, I think it would be also good to touch on storage, because, okay, so a good baguette doesn't really have much of a day, a shelf life beyond the day when you should be eating when it's perfectly fresh. But the point is one can freeze them, so I want you to touch on how it's best to freeze them, and then once they're frozen, how it's best to resuscitate them.
Okay. There is, with the fast consuming of bread these days, bakeries are cropping up in there to try and keep up the demand for bread. But bakers have come up with a way of which you call par baking, which we bake the bread halfway, just like halfway, 3/4 of the baking. It's baked done. Immediately cool it. After cooling, wrap it up, vacuum packing it, freeze it, just like that. When required, at a time when it's required, I'm sure we do that at our homes as well. When required, take it, defrost it, then bake it for the next leftover minutes. Let's say for 15 minutes, you should like go for 17 minutes. But the taste won't be the same. The actual thing, it won't be the same as a fresh bread. But it is accepted. For me, it will be better that way for storage, because sourdough, it's a process of baking every day. To bake a sourdough every day, it's a tiresome thing. You need to be at home every time and maintain all the cost. So baking ones in bulk, I think it's much more cheaper, which is what I do as well. Bake bread ones, started baked by sourdoughs, freeze them, or slice them, freeze them into the freezer, withdraw as I want. Then you can actually do that. You can actually, that's acceptable. You still have a taste, but not as compared to as the
I
fresh.
think for a normal housewife with an average freezer, I do find that putting things into brown bags, you know, the paper bags, are better than using plastic. The brown paper bags are very good. And in America, very often they use cloth bags. But for most of us, brown bags are fine and do help a great deal. And I also feel that I'm not really keen on just taking the bread out and letting it stand and defrost. I like taking it from the freezer into the hot, not very hot oven for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And that way I feel you very often have the best of the bread. And then it becomes toast. Yes.
We learn every day. I picked up something, but I'm sure I can agree with you on baking. Baking is a stage of baking. Baking is quite a lot of stages we go through baking. You might not notice it, you go through it every day. Even a home baker go through those stages, which are 14 stages, which is the 14th, which is baking, which is very vital. Baking the bread, it's a 14th stage of baking as well. It's included. I can agree with you on the baking as well. It's very important. It is very important. It is very important. I've picked up and learned something. Thank you. Any more questions? I've got.
Well done. Remember, you have got the 1st of April bakers to ask 1,000 questions. And if you're going to ask you questions of anybody, it's this man. He's got the winning formula. Thank you.